So you've got right off the bat, you got a global shortage of diesel, aviation fuel, which is why the prices of those keep going up. And yet today in the futures oil market, they're saying, "Oh, Brent, it's dropped almost $20 in 4 days, 5 days." Everybody's deluding themselves. "Oh, happy days are here again. The oil crisis is over." It's not. It's that they're lying to themselves. They're lying to the world. And you can tell those lies all you want, but then when you go to fill up your truck with diesel, reality hits you right in the face.
Everyone is focused on missiles, military strikes, and breaking news. But former CIA analyst Larry Johnson believes the bigger story is unfolding beneath the headlines. He argues that supply chains, critical minerals, and shrinking military inventories, not just battlefield events, could reshape the global balance of power. Whether you agree with his conclusions or not, the questions he raises are difficult to ignore.
First, it is the disruption of key commodities for the global market. And it's not just the disruption of the oil, which is predominantly sour crude, which means high sulfur content. The disruption of LNG, principally out of Qatar. Connected to that, the disruption of 40% of the world's supply of helium, because helium is a byproduct of the production of the liquid natural gas that was being pulled out of the ground in Qatar. And then the limited supplies, the decline of about 35% of the world's supply of sulfur and urea, which play critical roles in a number of industrial processes, but especially with fertilizer. So you've had this global disruption, and particularly for the oil that was coming out previously out of the Persian Gulf, there are 4 geographic centers of refinement for sour crude. And the sour crude is used to produce diesel and aviation fuel. Those 4 areas were the Gulf Coast of the United States, now called Gulf of America, previous Gulf of Mexico, India, then China, and last, I'll put them together, Japan and South Korea. Now, India's refining production is way down, simply because the United States got about 8 to 10% of its oil out of the Persian Gulf, and it's important that people understand that how refineries are set up. They're built to handle specific types of oil. And the simplest way to say is they're built up either to handle high sulfur content or low sulfur content. The low sulfur content is called sweet. United States produces tons of that. We got abundance. We produce so much we're able to export that to other countries. Our problem is only 30% of our refineries are set up to handle that sweet crude. 70% of our refineries are set up to handle the sour crude. That's why the United States has to import it from Canada, Mexico, Venezuela, and formerly from Russia and the Persian Gulf. Well, now roughly 8 to 10% of what it used to import is no longer available. Meanwhile, the availability in places like India, China, and Japan, South Korea is reduced significantly. So you've got right off the bat, you got a global shortage of diesel, aviation fuel, which is why the prices of those keep going up.
Larry argues that the conflict extends far beyond the battlefield, affecting energy, shipping, fertilizer, and industrial supply chains. His central point is that these economic pressures may have wider global consequences than many expect.
Trump doesn't have a viable military option to open the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, no country or group of countries in the world have the viable military capability to force open the Strait of Hormuz without suffering significant maritime losses. Iran simply is too well entrenched, too well armed to be able to carry that off in a way that it would force Iran to back off. And what took place over the weekend, where Trump had vowed a massive campaign. Now, I'm not sure it would have compared with what was done in the early days of this war. I mean, what was done between the first 3-4 weeks, starting from February 28th, It wasn't significant, massive campaign, but turned out it did not weaken Iran. If anything, it strengthened Iran. So, and I know that the U.S. military people I was in touch with, they fully they were geared up. They thought this thing was going to jump off on Saturday night at about 6 p.m. Eastern time. Didn't happen. Trump pulled the plug. So the question is, why did he pull the plug? And I think it may be a combination of factors. One was reportedly he got a plea, insistent plea from Saudi Arabia saying, "Don't do it," because Iran said if you hit their power plants, if you hit their nuclear sites, they're gonna destroy ours. And the Saudis said, "No, we don't want any of that." Um, the other element though is the United States is running out of weapons. And they keep claiming, no, that's not the case. Nonsense. I just put a piece up at sonar21.com last night on gallium, the galling reality of the gallium chokehold. Because gallium is a critical mineral that is you can't build a fully functioning F-35 fifth generation fighter without it. And guess what? The United States supply of gallium is zero. It doesn't have any. Where does it come from? China. Gallium is a byproduct of aluminum production. The United States, when it moved away about 40 years ago from producing aluminum, let that production process go overseas to other countries, lost its ability to take that aluminum and extract the gallium from it. So now the United States is totally dependent upon China, and China is telling us with gallium, we're not giving you a damn ounce.
The discussion shifts from economics to military capability. Larry argues that logistics, industrial production, and access to strategic materials are becoming as important as military hardware itself.
So you can go to open source. So I wrote about this. People can go back and look at March 3rd of this year at sonar21.com. And I went through the open source because the open source regarding the PAC-3 missile, the Patriot missile. And we know from open source that from 2015 to 2020, so that's 6 years, the United States was producing, it said, between 100 and 300 a year. So just for the sake of estimate, I said, let's go with 300 every year. Let's give it the full benefit of the doubt, man. They were maxing it out. Then for 21, 22, 23, 24, those 4 years, they produced 500 a year. Okay, so that's 2,000 plus 1,800. So that's 3,800. And then in 2025, I think the number was that they produced like 620. So, that takes you up to like 4,220, 4,260. That's the maximum. So that was as the end of 2025. Okay. Then you start doing subtraction. How many missiles were given to Ukraine that they fired? Remember, every time they fire a PAC-3, they're firing 2 against one incoming target. Estimated they gave Ukraine roughly 1,000. Okay, so we go from 3,600 down to, or 4,600 down to 3,600. How many were given to Israel and used by Israel during the 12-day war? Well, in June of 2025, take off another 800. How many have been used in the course of the first 42 days of this war this year, and then over the last few weeks? Guarantee at least 1,500. And then out of that, look at that total 4,620 number, at least 1,500 of those had gone to foreign. So they're out. For all practical, they're out. They can pretend, oh yeah, we got plenty. Nonsense. They don't. And it's not a matter of just turning to Lockheed Martin, flipping the switch. Okay, yeah, build us some more, because they need the rare earth minerals. I can't. I want to beat this into people's heads. This is so critical to understand. It's just not a matter of, do we have the willpower to make it? Yeah, you may have the willpower, but you don't have the material you need. And then on top of it, apparently, the PAC-3 missile has got like 20 or more subcontractors that each make like one little part. Then each part has to be tested. So, getting them assembled becomes a multi-year process.
Using publicly available figures, Larry estimates how quickly advanced missile inventories can be depleted and why replacing them is a slow industrial process. This forms the foundation of his broader argument about long-term military sustainability.
It's not confined just to what's going on with Iran. My God, it is. I challenge anybody to go on to Grok or Claude or Chat GPT or DeepSeek or Kimi. Use any of them and ask the question: how much territory has Russia taken in Ukraine this year? Oh my God, Russia's lost territory. And you're going, what? I mean, and what they're basing it on, what these search engines based on, is they take information from people like the Institute for Study of War, and it's algorithmically rated higher, more reliable than anything out of the Russian Ministry of Defense, and of what they call open source intelligence, which is essentially CIA disinformation put out on the web. And these engines absolutely insist that Ukraine has taken more territory from Russia than Russia's taken territory from Ukraine, despite the fact that right now in Sumy, you can see the armies have swept forward and are enclosing Sumy. The same thing, the Russian army enclosing and encircling Kharkiv. They have advanced significant Konstantinovka in Ukraine, except Ukrainians keep saying, oh, no, we still got control of that. And so these AI search engines go, well, I mean, if Ukraine said it, it's got to be true. I mean, it's just such total horseshit, but it's put out there as a fact, shaping public perceptions, when the reality on the ground is 180 degrees opposite. And we're seeing the same thing with respect to Iran. They keep talking about Iran's weakness. Iran has driven the United States military effectively out of the Persian Gulf. It's knocked out at least 19 radars and or satellite communication systems. It's forced the United States to withdraw personnel from bases, army bases in Kuwait, from the naval base in Bahrain, from the Air Force base in Al Udeid in Qatar, and locate where? They're going primarily to Israel. They've even forced them out of air bases in Jordan.
Larry contends that public narratives and his interpretation of developments on the ground diverge sharply. He argues that regional military dynamics are changing in ways that could alter future strategic calculations.
There's a diplomatic impasse right now. The impasse is this. The Trump team's position is Iran must negotiate on the nuclear issue first and foremost before anything else. They've got the Trump team needs a victory to show that, okay, we've got, basically going back to the JCPOA. That's all it is. Iran's saying, no, we're not going to negotiate anything about any nuclear issue, whether it's enrichment or the possibility of building a nuclear weapon, until you fulfill the MOU, which means Israel withdraws from southern Lebanon, you lift the blockade, you lift the sanctions, you unfreeze the assets, and you acknowledge that we've got control of the Strait of Hormuz. That's it. And right now, the United States is not willing to do that. But the problem Trump is going to face it's going to be on the economic front. They've been able to mitigate, cover up so far the actual effect on diesel, aviation fuel. They've been able to pretend that, everything's okay, but it's not okay. And the international financial market is not okay. The dollars on the international market is not okay. People aren't lining up to buy the dollars, just the opposite. Whereas the Chinese are in a much stronger position. They've been buying gold like mad and stockpiling gold. Why? Because they're going to have a gold-backed currency. And when people around the world are looking to invest, do you want to invest in the United States where you just got Donald Trump's promise, oh, yeah, we'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today? Or do you go with the Chinese and say, hey, ours is gold-backed? You buy it, you got guaranteed for, each dollar will have X amount of value on gold, depending on what the gold market is. So China is rapidly moving, along with Russia. They're building up the whole BRICS economic infrastructure. And, the United States is going to have to contend with that because this the, the the impact of the shutdown of the Persian Gulf right now, it's a global economic impact. Now, China, for its effort, on one hand, is trying to mitigate that because they depend upon exporting to the global south. But at the same time, they've shown no indication that they're going to abandon Iran and force Iran to surrender to the United States. Just the opposite, because the Chinese recognize as well, they're next on the menu. If Iran goes down, if Russia goes down, China's next on the menu, and they understand this, so they're playing, they're planning for it, and are prepared to deal with that. That's where the United States hasn't even planned for this. We thought, oh well, the supply of earth minerals, that'll take care of itself somehow, and any solutions are a good 3 to 5 years away for the West. So I think the economic realities are ultimately going to be what's going to compel Trump. He's going to have to make concessions to Iran.
The interview concludes by returning to economics. Larry argues that financial pressure, industrial capacity, and global markets may ultimately shape diplomacy more than military escalation.
I think we're going to see some more back and forth. I think potentially later, we'll see U.S. retaliating for the attacks in Kuwait. And then Iran will retaliate in turn for that. So this back and forth, the claims that the Trump administration is making is that, we got advanced talks and we're going to get the Strait of Hormuz open. I wouldn't go to the bank and bet on that.
No, but the desperation is definitely setting in.
Throughout this interview, Larry Johnson presents a consistent argument that future geopolitical competition will be influenced not only by military force, but also by industrial capacity, critical supply chains, energy markets, and economic resilience. These are his assessments, and time will determine how accurately they reflect future events. Regardless of where you stand, the interview highlights how closely economics and national security have become connected.